It's obviously a time when many colleagues are either trying to take a moment or they're sat here planning for the week ahead. And of course, what we're trying to do is even more important. We're trying to plan for the future of our union. Because remember that date, October the 4th, is when the ballot papers are going to be starting to be sent out to every NEU member to their home address, giving NEU members a chance to decide who's going to fill a key post in our union's leadership team. And indeed, it's the first ever elected Deputy General Secretary. And as you know, there'll be 3 candidates on that ballot paper. And obviously, I know what I put on my election address, but I'm sure all 3 election addresses will be candidates promising that they're going to change education, that they've got the vision for the better future. And yes, we all need a vision, because absolutely education shouldn't be like it is at the moment. We shouldn't be working in an exam factory system dominated by tests, tables and performance pay. We shouldn't be in an unaccountable, deregulated system, broken up into academies, where bullying and victimization are rife, where people face support plans, excessive workloads, and as we all know the figures, but it's worth reminding everybody, where 1 in 5 new teachers leaves after 2 years, 1 in 3 after 5 years, and that turnover has been going on for years and years. But the key difference, therefore, in this election, as I said on my campaign website at the very beginning, is how can you win those demands? How can we implement our vision? What actually needs to be done as a winning strategy? Now, I do believe that there are some who almost hope or wish that now that the incompetent Williamson has been replaced with the perhaps more competent, let's see, Nadeem Zahawi, that if we sat down with him and persuaded him of the justice of our case, then things would be better. But, you know, we've been through that with Education Secretary after Education Secretary. And I think we just have to be honest with our members and say that, yes, we need those arguments. And yes, we need the analysis. But on their own, they are going to have very little effect on politicians who are driven by a very different agenda to ours, an agenda of austerity and cuts, and where, frankly, they're building a future based on a low pay, low skill economy, and therefore funding high quality for education for all is definitely not part of their vision. And we face a hard-nosed government that will be looking to recoup its pandemic expenditure where it thinks it can get away with it. And like Sheila said at the beginning, in November, they made very clear that they were going to impose a pay freeze, and they waited to see how we would react. And sadly, they saw precious little reaction, and they've gone ahead with the pay freeze. And now, perhaps feeling more confident again, they've added to that the national insurance hike as well. And of course, it's not just about pay, because weakness can invite aggression. And there are other plans waiting in the wings that they've hinted at already. Perhaps full-scale academisation of every school. Perhaps extending the school day and our working hours even greater. So as a DGS candidate and as a DGS, I'm going to be honest with members. We have to be honest about what we need to do to respond. And I think that has to be, as a national union, responding with national action. And the thing is, as NEU members, we can say that with some confidence, because of all unions, back in January, as we know over Section 44, as Sheila has said in the chair, we showed that you can force this government to step back when we all acted together. And what also happened, of course, when we took that action, the union grew. I'm sure we were all in those Zoom meetings of thousands. We saw the new members join, the new reps stepping up, because the union was seen to be acting on something that really mattered to people. In that case, COVID health and safety. But as some of the executive members here know as well, that won't last. Those numbers will start to drop and are starting to drop. Because if the union isn't seen to be acting on the key things that people join a union for, not least to defend their pay and conditions, then they'll start to ask what was going on. And it's not just, last January we can look at that. I understand there's a discussion going on about how the London campaign in 2002 won increased London allowances. Well, as Lewisham NUT secretary at the time, I was very involved in that campaign. And yes, we put out analysis. Yes, we explained how lower London allowances was leading to teacher shortages. But the key point that seems to be forgotten that led to that victory at that time was that we took 2 days of strike action, first the NUT and then joined by the NSUWT, a fantastic rally that took place in Kennington Oval, which I'd love to repeat. And I think we did repeat on another occasion in further action. So that's the way that we win things. And of course, workload has never subsided. And on top of the normal pressures that everybody has on them, of course, during the COVID months, then we also had all those additional pressures of the teacher assessed grades, of the online learning, the very stress of just dealing with COVID in our communities and in our classrooms. But now, of course, we've got this drive to get back to normal, as it were, which of course means pretending that the COVID risks have gone away and going back to the normality, which was, after all, 50+ hours working weeks. And as you all know, the thanks that we've got for that is that 1.75% for support staff and absolutely zero for teachers in England, with a national insurance increase, the rocketing fuel prices, and an inflation rate of heading to 4% and more. It's an absolute insult to everybody who works in education. But the question is, where is our response? Where has our campaign been? In discussion, you'll hear from some of the NEU, NEC members who are supporting me for Deputy General Secretary and share a very similar strategy for action. When the September National Executive took place, there was no paper tabled in response to that attack had been made at the end of July. I've seen one that's now been tabled for October, but one that I think is frankly completely inadequate. It rightly sets out that we've really now effectively got a year ahead of us to win a rise in September 2022 that reverses the attacks in our incomes this year. And it also rightly says that alongside pay cuts, we should also restore national pay scales, end performance-related pay, and reduce workload. I'm glad to see those points are there, because they're exactly the points that the National Executive members here have tabled in a motion to the Executive, and exactly the points that I've been raising in my demand for a national contract, winning on pay and on workload, in particular, removing that open-ended wording in the school teachers' pay and conditions document that says, in addition to the directed hours, a teacher must work such reasonable additional hours as may be necessary, as it says. And obviously that's all that marking, all that planning that takes place in the evenings, in the weekends, in our holidays. We need that to have a limit too. And it also rightly says in that paper that's going to the Executive that we know the review body will take evidence in November and December. And if elected Deputy General Secretary, I would be speaking up for such a claim on pay and hours and performance-related pay. And then we know that in July, as in previous years, probably right at the end of the term, they will announce its decisions for teachers' pay. And there'll be a separate negotiations going on for support staff pay as well. So if we are serious, we need a timetable that influences those decisions. But the Executive, from what I understand, and the Executive members can explain further, there won't be any timetable for any ballot. It'll be timetables about sending out postcards to MPs, about sending letters to the review body, and so on. Now, postcards, petitions, Twitter storms, all of those things have their place in building a campaign. But I'm afraid I think members are realistic. If that's all that's being offered, when you're weighed down with your everyday pressures of work, people are going to say, why take time out to do something that really is going to have very little effect on its own? But I'm afraid then, members, you'll be told that it's your fault. Because you didn't send enough postcards, there's clearly no mood for action. You'll be told that instead of preparing for a national ballot, what we should be doing is advising people on how to take up performance-related pay issues. Well, yes, we should take up performance-related pay issues, but we know what difficult ground that is to fight on when you're up against your management, when you're up looking at people's individual targets and so on. And so, you know, I'll finish in the next couple of minutes, but bluntly, I feel that the union is losing its way. It's failing to provide the leadership that we really need. And therefore, it's made me even more important that my stand for Deputy General Secretary succeeds. Because I've said in my election address, of course, we've got to build a workplace level. Of course, we've got to build those workplace disputes. But I've said we cannot leave individual reps to be doing the fighting alone, and individual members and school groups to be fighting alone. To fight hard battles against tough managers, fighting tough, tight budgets is a difficult thing to do. The job of leadership, of national leadership, is to give everyone the confidence to fight, and above all, to fight together like we did over Section 44. And that's how we won. So that's the leadership that we need now. And that's why I'm standing as Deputy General Secretary to provide it. We know that building for national action won't be an easy task. We face ballot thresholds that are deliberately being put in our way to make it easy. But the job of leadership is to find a way over those barriers put in front of us, soberly but with determination to find a way forward. Because influencing the review body before July can't be done by postcards and letters. It needs, as the NEC colleagues are proposing, ballots in the spring term so that we can take the national action that will be needed. It needs turning out all of the resources of the union with rallies, meeting, demonstrations, yes, setting structure tests, but the structure test that I would want to see is not how many postcards we send, but for example, how many home address lists have been updated so we know that the ballot papers will be going to the right place and we can get the turnout we need. I think my stand is already beginning to have an effect, sharpening the debate around what we need to do about pay and workload. But the Deputy General Secretary election is now an opportunity for everyone to show that they want that fight to take place. They want the National Union to prepare for national action, to stand up against the pay freeze. And then I can also be a DGS who'll call for that from the top of the union as your first elected DGS. So very pleased to hear from you what you think, to answer your questions and your ideas as well on how we can win on pay, on workload, and all the other things that we're facing. Thanks for listening.